Hey everyone, it's me, Ryan. I am a partner here at PMsquare, and I am happy to welcome you to our Cognos 11.2.3 live stream unboxing. So I see, go ahead and say hello if you're in the chat. I see Jerry pointing out, asking if we're going to go live now. We're at 1 p.m. So there was a mix-up. Those of you who are here are probably here because you got the YouTube notification. So thank you for being on the spot, paying attention to that sort of stuff. We appreciate it. That is the advantage of clicking subscribe and hitting the bell button, is when we accidentally mess up the invite that we send to your calendar, you will still make the live stream. Yeah, my microphone should be on. Can people confirm? Can you hear me? Not hear me? Yes, no, thumbs up. Okay, it is. Yes. Thank you, PMsquare bot. What a handy robot that is. Okay. It's good to see you all here. I see some familiar faces. Martin, Mohammed, Jerry. Of course, we've got the world famous Cognos Paul from coming to us live from Israel. So Martin from Germany. Everybody says it's okay now. I apologize if you missed my intro there. But as I said, I'll just repeat it. We just want to thank you for showing up and noticing that the button that we had gone live, because there was a little mix-up, and so the invite on your calendar may be incorrect, but you're here anyway. And of course, this is available after the fact as a replay, so nobody has to worry about missing it. So we are super excited to talk to you today about 11.2.3. This came out last Friday or the Friday before. And this is really the biggest release, I think, since 11.2. So we have a lot of cool stuff to show you today. Now, before we get started, just to give you a little rundown on what it is that we have going on here. We've got some stuff that we want to talk to you about. So things to note. You know what? My Mac is causing problems here. So things to note. First of all, go to PMsquare.com and check out our event notifications. One good way to keep up to date with our events is to go to our event notifications. You will always get notified when we have an event like this coming up. Second thing I want to talk about, CogBox. If you haven't checked out the CogBox lately, you need to do it. PMsquare.com. Look at the CogBox. This is the coolest collection of extensions to Cognos that you're ever going to see. You know, Paul is here in the chat. He is working on some next level Galaxy Brain stuff that you're not even going to believe the changes it makes to things like data modules and reporting, and now dashboards. I mean, I've seen some of the stuff Paul is working on as far as how he's going to extend dashboards and make them more useful for you, and it will blow your mind. The next thing I want to mention is our SaaS Anywhere program. So the SaaS Anywhere program is something that we introduced last year. It has been really picking up steam in the Cognos community. What this is it gives you the SaaS experience of unloading maintenance of Cognos onto PMsquare. So whether we call it SaaS Anywhere because whether you're running on AWS, on IBM's cloud, on Azure, or on-prem, we will make it so that it is like you are using a SaaS tool by taking over all the things you don't want to do, like applying an 11.2.0 or 11.2.1 to 11.2.3 upgrade, making sure your servers are up, all the admin tasks that you want to offload so that you can focus on delivering reports and analytics that matter. That is what the SaaS Anywhere program is all about. So I encourage you to check it out. Now, I see in the chat some cool stuff that is being pasted in here. Paul is big upping the CogBox, and Martin is agreeing that it's the greatest. It is really cool. So I encourage you to check it out. All right. Now, with that said, let's get past the promo and focus on the meat and potatoes of today's presentation. So I am going to welcome to the presentation today my good friend and colleague, Craig Colangelo. Hey, Craig, how's it going?
Pretty good, Rye Guy. How are you?
I am good. It's good to talk to you, man.
Yeah, it's been a while. I'm actually going to be in your neck of the woods next weekend, so might have to look you up.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's awesome. Yeah, let me know if you're going to be around here. So, of course, Craig is visiting. As you all know, I'm in beautiful Detroit, A+ tourist destination. I suggest you all come and check it out sometime. Yeah, so Craig is Craig is going to be primarily manning the keys on the demo today and walking us through stuff, and I will be watching the chat and helping provide the live reaction. So, you guys have heard me say this before, but I'm going to say it again. This is a live stream. This is not a webinar. And so what makes it the most fun is if you share your reactions, your opinions, what's good, what's bad, what you love, what you hate, and what you want to see in the future in the chat. I'll be monitoring that, and we'll be trying to keep it interactive and fun. It's more fun for us. It's more fun for you. So as we go through it, let us know what you think. And so with that said, Craig, you want to do a quick 10-second intro to yourself for people?
Yeah, so I've been doing this IBM thing for, I don't know, past 20 years or so, and have done a lot of other things in the analytics space, but excited to show you what 11.2.3 is all about. Like Ryan said, there is some real substance to it, but unfortunately, I'm going to start with the boring stuff. So let me show you. Let me show you some of the security vulnerabilities that have been addressed. Okay,
very important.
Not to steal the steam or anything, Ryan, but this is definitely some of the really important stuff that people have a tendency to gloss over, especially when we're doing unboxing type things like this. But the reality is that some of these are really, really important, right? So there were quite a few things addressed here. So if you were on, obviously 11.1.7 is the LTR. And if you happen to be on Fixed Pack 5, some of the things that were rolled out in 11.2.3 were already addressed in that. But if you're not on that, 11.2.3 addresses some pretty real vulnerabilities. So things like some plain text passwords. Another big one here was a denial of service via email flooding, which actually prompted a new advanced parameter in Cognos to limit that. But I don't know, if we scroll down and look at some of these vulnerability details, I mean, some of them, this CVSS base score kind of gives you some idea of the severity of the vulnerability, right? So, 4.3 is usually not that bad, but there are some Node.js components that are up near 10, which are kind of a big deal, right? So, as always, IBM offering managers are doing a great job of putting out these quarterly releases, these dot releases. So the least we can do is just adopt them, right? And they address all these defects and security vulnerabilities. And speaking of defects, so over 200 APARs were addressed here as well, right? So important to kind of always recognize that not only are we getting new features and functionality, but they're also addressing issues, whether it was with the previous release or with new security vulnerabilities that are addressed. Fun stuff, all right?
It is fun stuff. It is really important though. And if anything, I mean, that if you're looking for a justification to do this upgrade, because there's a lot of great features, right? If you're looking for a justification to do this upgrade and the features aren't getting it done, I would lean into the fixes and the patches and the vulnerabilities that are addressed. That usually can help get things over the finish line. I do want to give a shout out to Ivan saying hi from Croatia. Ivan, I was in Croatia about 2 months ago. What a beautiful place. I had a great time. So really love your country there. Okay. Let's jump into the demo. Excited to see what we have here, Craig.
Me too. But before we do, Ryan, were you on the Adriatic? Were you actually on the ocean?
Yeah, I was. I was in Dubrovnik.
Nice. Beautiful.
Yeah, oh, man. It was amazing. What a cool town.
On my very, very short list of places to go.
Yeah. Oh, you should. If you get a chance, take it. I had an unbelievably good time.
I bet. I've heard nothing but amazing things about Croatia.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Well, let's start with, obviously, all right, here we are, 11.2.3. Whenever you want to access release notes quickly after you roll something out or, point your users to them, in the Learn panel here, it's a little bit hidden, but up top, there's this little What's New button here, and you click that, and it takes you right to the release notes, right? So if ever you want to point users in that direction and say, in addition to obviously whatever sort of training or live streams you invite them to, you can also point them at that documentation as well that's accessible right there from the UI. So one of the big things with this release was Microsoft Teams integration. So it's added the same way, at least from a Cognos perspective. On the Microsoft, Teams administration side, there's a bit of work that you have to do, and it's documented pretty well in the Cognos documentation. But from a Cognos perspective, all you have to do as an administrator after that Teams setup is done is go into your manage customization. I'm sorry, not there. Collaboration, right? Yeah, collaboration and add, right? So we can see that in addition to Slack, there's now this Microsoft Teams setup as well. I didn't actually go through the process of adding it to our teams. Maybe I will for a future live stream, but there's some cool new stuff, right? So you can, in addition to actually sharing content in the same ways that you can with Slack, by pressing the share button and, shooting a screenshot with markup and stuff like that to a colleague, for example. With Teams, you can actually embed an interactive dashboard in one of the channels. So, I mean, that to me sounds pretty cool. If you're a Teams shop and you utilize it a lot, that's yet another way to collaborate around analytics and to, again, really reinforce, database decision making. Ryan, have you seen this in action anywhere? I mean, this to me reminds me very much of like a lot of the Domo features,
Yep.
That have been around for a bit.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a useful thing. And I know in particular with, when the Slack integration came out, I think a lot of people were excited, but the reality is that the majority, I think probably the vast majority, I punched a question in the chat about whether you use Slack, Teams, or a different chat app. But I think the majority of Cognos customers probably are using Teams versus Slack. And so it was kind of like a cool feature that a lot of people felt like they couldn't use yet. Yeah. And I do think the ability to put an actual interactive dashboard in the chat is kind of into Teams is kind of, it takes it beyond just like, hey, here's a screenshot of a dashboard, which is what most BI tools have as an integration with chat applications. Now, you mentioned Domo. Some of them go a lot deeper. Like Domo, really puts a big premium on communication features. But for the most part, BI, it's like just pasting in a screenshot. So I give IBM a lot of credit for thinking a little ahead and doing something better than just, hey, here's a screenshot of a chart.
Totally, yeah. And like I said, from an admin perspective, at least from a Cognos admin perspective, it's super easy. On the Microsoft Teams admin side of things, you have to have a certain license type, but it's a pretty common license type. And you have to add an application and, of course, add it to your security profiles and Azure AD and things like that, but not too difficult, it seems. So let's talk a little bit about another interesting feature, the context-sensitive search. Okay, so let's see. So I'm back out here at my team content, and I'm going to dive into a particular folder. So I'm in the samples 11.2.3 folder. Now, if I go into search from here and I type in gallery, okay, of course it's doing the type ahead, looking, and maybe it's one of these, maybe it's not that I'm looking for. But if I just hit enter right here, it's now context aware and context sensitive. So you can see there's a new tab here, right? So there's the search results in samples 11.2.3, because again, it understands that I was coming in. I was in that folder, the samples 11.2.3 folder, and looking for something in particular. So my first tab, this new tab, shows me the results from that particular folder and anything beneath it, right? And then if that's not quite what I'm looking for, I can always pop over into the all content and see where else it might exist. So again, a small little usability thing, but to me, again, if I'm searching for something, it's generally, especially if I'm adminning somebody's environment, I'm pretty much, especially with something with a lot of nested hierarchies and depth and breadth to it, I'm generally starting from a place that's below the root level, way below the root level, and I just can't find that one particular thing. So this context sensitive search is pretty meaningful and pretty cool, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's one area I think, just based on the stuff I've seen out of the roadmap from IBM, I feel like that's an area that I think this is maybe the first step in search becoming more and more useful over time. And so it's good to see that they've taken that first step.
No doubt. I mean, it was just, a little while ago where they added, filtering to where you can look for, time context, when it was last modified, for example, and then, all the different objects. So this is yet the next iteration of that. And again, smart, real smart and very useful, I'd imagine. All right, let's get out of the search here. We'll close out our search. and go back to our main menu here. And I wanted to show some new dashboarding features. So let's just open this sample report here. Another really cool thing that IBM added to its forecasting capabilities, and again, this is all part of the with Watson moniker, right? This truly is a product that rolls up under Watson now, just like planning analytics, and they're using better Watson-based engines for even forecasting. So if we look at, let's look at something that has some forecasting capabilities here. Historical trends, of course, that makes sense. So you'll see there's a new little button up here, the analytics button, right? So right now, I'm in a dashboard. I'm not in edit mode. I'm just in normal consumer mode. And I still have this new button here for analytics, okay? If I were to select, for example, something with a forecast on it or insights, even not being in edit mode, I can now enable forecasts and I can enable insights. Again, without having to have the capability to edit anything. So that's kind of cool. But another thing that's really important to point out is the optional factors to consider here, right? 0 out of 5. We don't have anything added to this yet. I'm about to add something, but basically IBM just rolled out the ability to basically use for their forecasting, not just univariant, but multivariant forecasting. So let me show you what that might look like. So let's edit this thing. We'll maximize it. We'll go into the fields. Oh. Let me select it first. And we'll go into the fields and maybe it's properties. It should be fields. All right, so you can now drag and drop using that new analytics button. You can drag and drop other factors to consider. And the way that that works, actually, let me see which fields these are built off of. So these are all customer analysis fields. So let's pop in and we'll throw a few more things from the customer analysis table in here. So we know that we've got the as our measure here, we can see that we have the number of policies, right? So maybe we have a hunch that maybe customer lifetime value and maybe the number of months since the last claim or the number of policies are also playing into this somehow. So I'm just going to drag each one of those onto this optional factors to consider. And cool. You can do a maximum of 5 optional, multivariant sort of flavors to it. And what it does is it has the potential here to create better forecasts. Because if there's a correlation, if there's some sort of dependency or correlation or impact from those measures on this forecast, it'll actually change the forecast and show these as the optional factors that have been considered in it. So when we hover over, it actually shows us those factors that were considered. The new additions, right? And then if we even click, this is new as well, right? If you click on the statistical details, it's going to take you to
oh yeah, the forecast explainer. Cool.
Yeah, and again, this means something to some people, maybe not to, I know that MACE is a very important, measure when you're talking to a data scientist about how, accurate the forecast is, right? What makes that up? I'm not quite sure. But you can, one thing that's important to note here is that you can go all the way over to the right here and see in the notes what sort of forecast it was using. So apparently these optional factors didn't have any impact on our number of policies. And I can tell that because I look at the notes and I see it says not multivariate, but univariate. So again, IBM giving you, using more of the Watson stack to give you the ability to do multivariate forecasts that could yield, much more accurate, much more interesting, much more, non-obvious sorts of forecasts. I'm all for it.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's really exciting to me to see because I know probably a number of people who are watching right now have seen at one point or another an IBM roadmap presentation, or maybe worked with the design team in Ottawa. And this is one thing I'm going to give a shout out to Efruz from IBM for shepherding this one through the analytics panel. I think I would venture to guess the first iteration of what you're going to see on the analytics panel. And if the things I've seen in design are still coming down the pipeline, this is really going to become a really powerful place to build on what they've done here, to give you more and more control over what forecasts look like, and the ability to do scenario modeling and all that stuff. I think is potentially in play, right? Roadmap conversation potentially in play based on some of the designs we've seen in the past. And so it's really exciting to see that foundation of the analytics panel make it into dashboards.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, with Watson, it's living up to its name.
Exactly.
So that's great. All right, so let's jump out of here, and we're going to show something else that should add a lot of value for a lot of people. And that is cascading filters. So in dashboards now, we can actually utilize cascading filters,
Yes.
Yeah, I know, right? Something that seems so obvious that just took a little bit to kind of make its way into the product, but a huge add in my mind. So what that looks like, again, using just this sample dashboard here, I'll throw it in edit mode. All right. All right, so let's take a look and see which table these visualizations are stemming from. All right, catch up with me, Sandbox.
There you go.
All right, sales. Okay. So what we're going to do, we'll just use sales, and we'll actually just we'll add it to this tab here, since we already got a bunch of stuff in the all tab. But we'll let's use geography, some sort of geography flair here. So let's see, we'll add country, state, city. I don't know why I can't control click right now, but we'll go around that. So we'll add country manually, state. I think I'm just being impatient with this sandbox. Yep, I'm being impatient.
Yeah. Well, it's guaranteed to happen anytime you have an audience, Craig. That's one of the rules of doing demos.
No doubt. There must be people watching.
Exactly.
It's a good way to know Big Brother's spying on you.
Uh-huh.
All right. Bit of a manual slog, but we'll get there. All right, so we added kind of this flair of geography, right? Where it's, I mean, you can think about this as a hierarchy, really, right? Where you've got country at the top, then down to state or province, then down to city, then down to postal code. So what you can do now, and it doesn't matter which order you add these things, it'll actually adjust itself based on the order that you add them to the canvas, or to the cascade set. So we'll do it from left to right first. But if you add it to the cascade set, and then you go to the next one, add it to the cascade set, add to the cascade set, add to the cascade set, all your downstream cascading filters will be filtered based on what you're doing upstream. So for example, If we wanted to exclude, Germany, Canada, and the UK, and just click the US, we can now see that our province or state values are limited to just US states, right?
This is great.
It is great. It's about time, right?
Yeah. Yeah, this is awesome.
And another cool thing too is that you can do this in reverse, actually. So, you could also do it the opposite way. So if I wanted to deconstruct this and just remove everything and do it from the bottom up instead of the top down, for example, say, I don't know, you had a use case that required that. And we'll get rid of our United States selection there. But if we wanted to add, again, I'm intentionally choosing the bottom first. So I'm choosing postal code and adding it to the cascade set. Now, when I add a second one here, it's going to flip the order. I don't know if you saw it,
great.
right?
Yep.
And see how it's grayed out around it. So I can keep doing that. And again, it naturally, because we're reading from left to right, it naturally realigns them, in the manner in which we read, right? At least here, right? So, again, same sort of a thing. If we wanted to narrow it down on a particular area code, let's say Colorado Springs, Colorado, which I happen to know off the top of my head. It's filtering it that way, that direction as well.
That's awesome. This is such a useful addition to dashboards. It's really, people often talk about the things that are in reporting that they wish were in dashboards, and I think this one is very high on the list. So to see it delivered in this release is just great.
No doubt. And yeah, I mean, it's about time, right? Like
yes.
these are things that you can do in reporting that, it was one of those use cases a lot of the times where you were like, okay, I've got to do this cascading filter. I better take this, dashboard into reporting. Now you can actually leave it there, which is wonderful. Just makes dashboarding more useful.
That's a great point too. I mean, I think over time they are kind of narrowing down the reasons to leave dashboarding, right? And so that's really great. We do have a question from Zach. He asks, so what does it look like outside of edit mode? Is it still in the gray box when you leave edit mode?
Let's find out. Good question, Zach. It is. So again, that gray box always indicates that you've got a cascading set. And again, it works either, whether you've got it in the all tabs or the this tab, same sort of functionality.
And so then you could have multiple cascading sets. Is that true? Okay,
you can. Cool. Yeah. I mean, obviously you want to kind of keep them out of the same sort of hierarchy, but or maybe you don't if you're clever. Yeah, I mean, you can throw time in here and geography and it'll work, the same way.
That's great. That's really cool. That alone, I think, removes one of the objections to dashboards, right? It's just
totally
make the filters so much more useful because it was such a pain before to look at filter A and then it's not filtering out the values in filter B. It was just painful. And so
no doubt. All right, we're going to pop back over to this visualization gallery dashboard, and we're going to look at, there have been a couple of new charts, or modified charts, I should say, included in this release. So the bar chart, the area chart, and the tree map in particular. But let's see. Yeah, let's just show quickly the bar chart change. A small thing, but it might, be really meaningful for some. And once again, I'm being impatient. But if we're going to select this bar chart, we're going to go into edit mode. All right, we're going to look at the properties here. So we can see we've got this bar chart, right, where we've got sales agents, coloring it, and then we've got these policy types as the y-axis here, and the measure over the x-axis, the number of complaints. If we if we want to see this new feature, what we can do is we can go to, and this new feature, by the way, is pretty cool. So you can add basically different different labels to the values here, and in different interesting ways. But let me show you what that means. So if we pop into the properties, man, she's running slow. And I think it's under. Oh, I've got my dashboard selected, not my individual. Let me pop back out real quick. Select the bar. Go to the properties. All right, and I believe it's under Axis. If we scroll all the way down to the bottom here, data value labels, right? So we can maximize it real quick. So we can show the labels, just a normal, raw value here. But then we can also do some pretty interesting other stuff. So this value label format allows us to do a couple of different things in 3 different areas, right? So you've got things that relate to the delta. So if you had a target on this thing, and we could actually throw a target in there, it actually shows up or down, whether it's below or above, and it shows the actual delta between the target and the actual.
That's awesome.
Great. I mean, yeah, it's more like a KPI widget almost, right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, you've got some that are related to the color, right? So the color here, we've got the sales agent as the color. You can show either the percentage of color. So again, all the purples here. So for agent, you got 21%, 73%, 5%, and that makes up obviously 100. But you can also do value and percentage of category, or color, I should say, or category. You can actually do those, either one of those options. So again, just like little, quality of life, little interesting ways to, show this data, and again, showing more information in a condensed way, which is always welcome. Usually welcome, I should say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's keep it simple, right?
Yeah. I mean, and it just, the kind of the one-click nature of it too is nice. Like you don't have to calc a delta, right? You can just click the button, which is a kind of one step above just letting me select a field to populate there. It's like, well, no, we're going to do it for you, which is even better.
Yeah. And let's throw a fake target on here real quick. Bum, bum. Yeah, we'll pretend like max claim amount is the target, even though that has nothing to do with anything. But that'll be our target. And then we'll go back into the properties here. And we'll show the delta version, which is, I think, really cool. So we'll show the percentage delta of target. So you can see it's above, it's below, it's missing by that much, right?
Yep.
That's pretty great. Again, imagine, showing, I don't know if anybody remembers the old Metric Studio days, but that was a really cool tool. If you're at a balanced scorecard shop, that was great. This kind of gets you a little bit closer to that, right? It shows you whether you're underperforming or overperforming and how, and at a glance, which is great.
Yep. Yeah. Shout out to Metric Studio. It was really cool. It left us before its time, I think.
I agree. Let's see. All right. Another interesting thing to just quickly show here is the tree map. I know I've got a tree map on here somewhere, I think on the policies. Policy details, not holders. All right. So get out of edit mode real quick and maximize this. We can see we can now show more information on a tree map, right? So we can see the label format, or we can see the label, and we can see the value all at once. This is also new functionality, but again, more information at a glance. I don't know. I can see value in not showing, for example, the label, right? So if you've got vehicle size here, then you've got the policy type beneath it. Maybe if that's hidden, it requires the user to do a little more digging. Obviously, when they see a very large chunk here, this one is 3.85K, right? Maybe you want them to hover over to see that it's actually two-door car. Maybe you don't, right? Depends on your use case. But right now, the new feature that they added was the ability to show both the value itself and the label, which is cool.
Awesome.
Yeah. And there have been a couple of other, interesting little changes, like to the area visualization. There used to be gaps for like null values, and you can actually fill those in now. Different ways for data point interpolation, things like that. Not worth really showing here, but if you have any questions about that, again, go to your documentation, look at those release notes, and see what's new in that regard. So, obviously there's a lot of bleed over in the reporting space. Drill throughs were changed a little bit. You can, there's a new property and advanced parameter to allow context filters to be passed, which is, great if that's really meaningful for you. Not a whole lot more done there, other than, obviously the bleed over that you would see in the visualizations here. But
right.
Another space where they added a lot of changes were in the modeling space. So let's pop out.
Data modules are my favorite.
Really? I didn't know that, Ryan.
Yeah, could you tell? I think at least 50% of the videos I ever made were about data modules.
Yeah, I find myself referencing those every once in a while too. So well done.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Let's pop into the Great Outdoors data module here.
Martin Otto did ask, is there any solution replacing Metric Studio? IBM's answer is use Planning Analytics. Yeah, in the IBM stack, that's still what I know. I don't know, Craig, if you've heard anything different.
No, you can. Yes, I've heard the same. IBM says the same thing. Use Planning Analytics, but the reality is that there are gaps there as well, right? Metric Studio was just a fully, vetted, fleshed out, fully, supported and matched what balanced scorecard shops do, including multi-grain, different grain sorts of measures, accountability, stop lighting. So you can do some of those things in Planning Analytics, but that KPI widget in dashboarding in CA also gets you pretty close to it. Not exactly the same, but close, right? So, I doubt unless there's a real concerted effort, and maybe, from like a management consulting perspective, if, balanced scorecards really kind of, rear their pretty heads again, then maybe, that becomes more worthwhile. But, man, I really hope one day there is a one-for-one replacement for Metric Studio, because it gets close, but it's not the same at all.
Right. Yep. Yeah, I agree completely.
Yeah. And I guess it is kind of maybe a fringe use case, right? Balanced scorecards used to be all the rage for a long time, and in some circumstances they still are, right? But maybe it doesn't have the steam that it once had.
They'll come back. They'll just have a different name.
No doubt.
It'll be the same thing.
Sounds like somebody's been doing this a while.
It's fun. Yeah, right. It's funny. One thing I've seen a lot of lately is like something that's becoming all the rage now is metadata modeling. Is suddenly like people are talking about on LinkedIn, like if you're not doing metadata modeling, you're doing it wrong. And it's like, boy, that sounds like what I was doing 10 years ago.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about something that will make you very happy, Ryan. Alias and shortcuts, right? So, if you speaking of metadata modeling, if you remember back to, maybe just think about like old conventional data warehouses and using Framework Manager to develop your models. Typically you're going to have one date dimension, right? And then you're going to have to create a bunch of aliases for that date dimension, depending on how you're joining it up to your facts, right? So, what IBM has graciously done is added aliases and shortcuts right here to the the data module WYSIWYG editor here. So let's add a new table. Oh, I shouldn't be on grid because that's going to take a bit. Let me change it here. All right. So as we can see, we've got two new options here. You can add a view and you can add an alias.
Nice.
or I'm sorry, a shortcut and an alias, right? So, you know, again, the use case with alias is, you know, say for example, you didn't have, you know, your, you know, relative time stuff added to your data module. Maybe you wanted to do it old school. So you can create an alias. Actually, let's go back and do that. So let's pretend like these, you know, ship date and close date time tables aren't there. And let's go in and add, based on the timetable, an alias. So we'll next this thing, add the alias, and we'll call it, I don't know, sales time or sales date. I don't know why they choose time there, but that's fine. And now we've got this sales date alias right here, right? So, you know, then you could go in, you could even use CogBox if you're real clever, into your column manager. I know Paul's happy to see this. And you could actually, you know, typical, you know, metadata modeling style, what do we call this? Sales date. You know, you could go in and actually modify each of these without having to go into the properties of each one and, you know, change the name, right? Even copy paste if you're real clever, or find and replace in the module spec if you really wanted to, but we just did it manually. And again, all those things are available through CogBox, which is great.
That's a beautiful thing right there.
Sure is, you know, and then we've gone in, we've done our next step, which you typically do when you're creating a data alias, for example, and you're renaming it to reflect the fact that you're keying it up with, right? So that's, you know, like, I don't know, some would consider this a small little ad, but man, that adds a lot of value.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, I can remember I wrote an article on my blog, it's got to be years ago now, about like how to fake aliases and shortcuts using views, and then like maybe model inheritance. And about every 6 months, someone will post a comment on that blog post like, yeah, this is like mostly it, but, and then they'd come up with a scenario where the fake way to do it doesn't work, you know? And so it's really good to see just the full support for this put in, where you don't have to use these creative ways to get you 80% of the way there. You can just do it. It's great.
Totally. Totally. So you're going to see less hits, Ryan, on your blog posts about that, but
that's okay.
You know, for a good cause, you helped.
I'm willing to give it up. It's fine. Surrender that traffic.
Yeah. Another cool thing that you can do now too is you can change. So if you have a custom table here, you can convert it. So say, for example, you didn't want it to be an alias, right? You actually want it to be a shortcut or a view. You can actually do that right from the WYSIWYG UI here, which is
that's
awesome,
great.
right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if you noticed when I showed the convert, there was also a relink. So again, this is something that if you had CogBox, you could, you know, you could do, because again, Paul's thinking ahead and helping address some of those gaps. But now you can do it right within the tool. So again, you could totally relink things right from that menu as well, which is pretty awesome.
That's amazing. That was one of the well, I think in the early releases of CogBox, that was one of the big things that got interest, was just people would build these huge data modules, and then they need to, you know, do relinking or change from one type to another. And we built that into CogBox. It's good to see. It's good to see IBM building it into the base product. That's kind of what we try to do with CogBox, is like we recognize there are things that could be improved, so we improve them. And then if IBM incorporates their own solution to that problem, like, we're happy for that, right? The tool gets better for everyone. Everybody wins.
No doubt. No doubt. Except for maybe Paul. But
well, Paul is just so far ahead, right? That I'm never worried that Paul's going to run out of things to do. I'll tell you that.
That is absolutely true.
Yeah.
And another interesting thing that they added, Ryan, that I can't believe wasn't actually a part of this, and I just failed to even recognize that it was adding descriptions to everything. So, for example, let's look at this sales table and look at its properties. I didn't realize that this wasn't there, but you can add descriptions now that are exposed to reporting. So for example, for this sales table, we can say something that we want our end users to be able to see, right? Like, this is obviously spelled wrong, a sales fact, you know, or whatever, you know, comments. And then when we look downstream in reporting, so if we pop back out and create a report off of this, for your consumers, they can now see, oh, interesting, download specification. Paul's going crazy with the CogBox. There's so many new features I can't even keep up.
I can't either.
That's no doubt a Paul ad.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I think that Paul. We're just giving Paul all the props here. He's gotten really good at integrating things so naturally into the UI that when you download the CogBox, a lot of times people who don't know you have it installed are just going to think these are base features of the product.
Exactly. So much so that I might actually need to create a demo environment that doesn't have CogBox so I can show the native, versus the CogBox. But so I'll queue that up for another day. But so I think I added that to the sales table. So if we look at the sales and we look at the properties now, we can see my misspelled description here.
Yeah.
Which is wonderful. Gives a little more context for report developers downstream. And of course, these things are exposed to reporting, not just this way, but you could also, almost create like a little metadata modeling tool, which I'm sure Paul has in the works. So, a small ad, but something that probably adds a lot of value given the right circumstance.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's kind of it for modeling. The only other things that really come to mind as important that I wanted to point out were in notebooks. So in notebooks now, you can actually export your notebook as a Jupyter notebook file, and then obviously utilize it outside of just the Cognos implementation, which is great. So I mean that's what a lot of data science work is about. Passing around these notebooks and sharing them and adding and collaborating and extending. Right. So now you can actually utilize Cognos as your as a UI in order to access that, add the value that you want. And then export it as a Jupyter notebook file and pass it on to whomever else is going to, extend it in whatever tool.
That's great. Yeah, that makes it just much easier to use Cognos as a component of your data science practice because that interchangeability is important.
Totally. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know, to me, Ryan, that felt like a pretty meaningful dot release. Again, putting aside like the APARs and the security vulnerabilities that were addressed, like even just some of those new ads go a long way in my mind. So kudos to IBM with this dot release.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great, I said at the beginning, right? It's the best release since the 11.2 initial release, and I stand by that after we've gone through it, that there's just a lot of really useful stuff. And I think more than just useful, it's the stuff that you've been asking for, right? You in the audience, like cascading filters and alias and shortcut tables and data modules and all that sort of stuff. And so that's really, it's great to see that they're prioritizing that sort of thing. I think IBM is really taking the feedback pretty seriously about what their core users, their longtime users need most in the product. Now, Craig has popped up the CogBox here. And so if you go to pmsquare.com/CogBox, we've talked a lot about it today because it's just so darn useful. You can see the list of what you get. So there's a free version of the CogBox and there's a paid version of the CogBox. That's your two columns here. And so you're free to go out and download the free version of the CogBox, and you'll get everything on the left-hand side. We're just giving it to you, right? I think the idea behind giving you so much for free is really that we believe in the Cognos community. That's why we host these live streams. That's why we make tooling like the CogBox, so much of it available for free. We want you to be great and your Cognos environment to be great. And so that is what we are here for. And you can see all the cool stuff here. Now, I think we've talked about doing, because there's so much new stuff coming to the CogBox that has been added or is coming since we did our last CogBox live stream. So I know there's some talk about doing that internally at PMsquare. That might be the next one live stream on the agenda. But I would encourage you to check it out. Now, I know Paul wanted us to show, he dropped it in the Slack, just showing in the chat, just showing what the find report dependencies button do. Maybe we could do Paul a quick favor and just show that.
let's do that. So let's pop back into this data module. And again, CogBox is context aware. So I believe it's in the table manager.
If it's not, Paul's about to let us know in the chat.
Yeah, do let us know, Paul. I'm not sure where it's at. Oh, column manager per data item. Good point. Okay, so instead of the table manager, we're going to pop into the column manager and we're going to find the downstream report dependencies based on this one that we're in. So let's see. Let's find some report dependencies. So if you remember in Framework Manager, right, like when you're doing like an impact analysis, right, and you're like, okay, something just changed upstream and I know it's going to blow everything up. You had the means to do that within Framework Manager.
Yeah.
You don't yet natively within the data modules UI. Well, you do now if you've got CogBox, and I don't know if this is premium or if this is freemium, but now you can actually find these report dependencies, downstream, which obviously we didn't find any here. But another interesting thing you can do is actually download this stuff too. So if you have the need to model these things, you can actually download the specs, which is pretty awesome as well.
That is just so cool. And I know finding those report dependencies is a huge pain point for people. Like they just want to know. I'm changing this thing. What is going to break? And right now, this is one of those things that I like to think, and we talked about, we put features in and then eventually IBM catches up. This is one of those ones that I know they feel is important. So they may catch up at some point, but for now, if you need it, and you probably do, the only way to get it is in the CogBox. And Paul says that's in premium, which makes sense because it's such a valuable feature. And so glad that we could show that. You can see it's popping up, no dependencies detected there for those of you who are watching. And so
I could find a better use case.
Yeah, I mean it's working, right? It's like it's popping up and saying, hey, right here we got nothing. And I'm amazed how quickly it runs too.
No doubt. Yeah. Here, let's actually see. Let's check this guy out one last time. And then, we'll push all the rest of this into a CogBox live stream for sure. Because nobody can keep up. Paul just keeps spitting out new, meaningful, interesting content.
Yeah, yes, he does. Yes, he does. I get a message from him once a week with a GIF that's like, "Hey, look at this thing. Hey, look at this thing. Hey, look at this thing." It's wild. That's why he's Cognos Paul. The rest of us don't have such a. I'm not Cognos Ryan, right? He's the one and only. All right. We'll let this thing run for a second. While I'm doing that, any final thoughts? If you have them get them in the chat now. I think this is a really cool release, and I'd like to congratulate the IBM team on delivering it. I know that they have a really robust roadmap of really cool things that are coming down the pike, and so we will, of course, be here to share those things with you when they launch. And so, I think at that point we will go ahead and sign off here. I don't know how long this thing is going to run, so so we're going to let it go for a little bit. Hopefully it pulls up before we're done, but I will just reiterate. So we talked a lot about CogBox today. It's funny, we did not actually plan that at all. It just was such a useful thing to discuss. And so do check out the CogBox. Again, go to PMsquare.com, sign up for event notifications so you never miss one of these. Like right now, people are starting to pile in because we had that snafu when it came with the calendar invite we sent you. So if you're joining now and you're wondering, why does it seem like it's the end? It's because it is the end, but this is available for live replay. And so sign up for the event notification. As always, click subscribe and hit the bell. If you subscribe and hit the bell, then even if we mess up when we tell you it is, you will always know when we go live because your phone will let you know, give you that notification when we're doing it. And then yeah, check out the website, and we will have events coming up. And then a reminder, SaaS Anywhere, I'll plug it one more time. If you would like that hands-off SaaS experience for your on-prem Cognos or your Cognos running on Azure that you're currently managing in the old school way, that is what SaaS Anywhere is all about. So reach out to us, and we can make it so that we take all that administrative management away from you. We keep your environment up and running. We keep it patched. We keep it on the newest version, so you have the newest features, and we keep it humming along so you can worry about delivering valuable stuff and not about environment maintenance. That is what SaaS Anywhere is all about. So until next time, I want to thank you for joining us again, Craig. It's always fun to do these with you.
Yeah, good to see you, buddy.
Yeah, good to see you too. And until next time, we'll see you later. Take care, Cognoids.
Take care.